Hello everyone, my name is Alejandra Solano. Please be welcome to my internship report presentation titled Audiovisual Translation of Short Films for the Festival Internacional de Cine y Audiovisual Infantil y Juvenil. Let me provide you first with the outline of this presentation, on which I will be talking about the host institution, the performed activities, the reflection essay, the cultural essay, and the final conclusions and recommendations. As you might be aware of, I decided to go for an internship instead of a thesis because by the end of my professional option in the field of translation, I wanted a more real approach to the professional workflow. At the same time, I was looking for an online experience that would fit my preferences and needs at the time. Today, I can say that this choice ended up suiting me better than I thought. The place that I called my host institution was FICAIJ, a Venezuelan organization that looks for educating young Venezuelans on audiovisual media. FICAIJ is a non-profit organization that was born in Mérida in 2001 and that gave birth to the Festival Internacional de Cine y Audiovisual Infantil y Juvenil, also known as FICAIJ, a window through which young Venezuelan audiences can watch national and international films. In addition to FICAIJ, FICAIJ also runs Bura, an online content agency that produces audiovisual materials through its webpage, Buracam. FICAIJ works mostly as an online network consisting of founding members, formal collaborators, and undergraduate students from the School of Modern Languages that take participation as interns. Regarding the performed activities, my work for FICAIJ was completely remote, and it took the form of two modules that differ from one another depending on the linguistic assistance that I provided, as well as for the different dynamics of each project. The first one was the translation unit for FICAIJ, for which I worked on the translation, subtitling, and synchronization of 4 foreign short films. I did direct translation from English and French into Spanish, and for such purpose I used a free subtitle editor called audiovisual that, if not the best option, it still allowed the management of audio, video, and scripts, and the production of subtitles. I ended up translating and subtitling 43 minutes from audio and scripts. Now, I would like to add that there are better options of softwares for audiovisual translation. Some updated versions that are available online and that are even free, that display many other functionalities and even a more appealing interface. There are, of course, some other paid versions that allow, for example, the management of turn bases and the service of quality assurance, for example. But I guess that in this case, audiovisual was the software that all the team had previous experience with, and it was still working fine. The second unit was called the communication unit. Here I had to work on the procedural elaboration of a digital article that will be published on the web page. It all started with the documentation process on certain children-related topics. Then it would follow the article outline and the content writing, following, of course, reliable sources that were used to support the originality of our ideas. Then I had to work on text editing on WordPress, which is a content management system. For this task, I had to make sure that texts were almost flawless and that they reached most of the software readability scores. Then, eventually, when I gained some experience, I became the head of team and editor in charge of quality assurance, assistance to the editorial team, and support to the writing team. During all this time, I was not only able to meet deadlines, but also to set and establish deadlines and different goals. I was also able to deliver formal and informal feedbacks through different channels. I was capable of leading the writing team as well. Well, let's move on to the reflection essay, on which I will develop some definitions, difficulties, solutions, and achievements regarding my role as an audiovisual translator. While doing some research, I found out that authors describe audiovisual translation, or AVT, as one of the most thriving branches of translation studies, also as an adaptation or transfer text, as well as a constrained translation, due to the limitations to which AVT is subject to. It is also an interdiscipline due to the multifolded fields behind it, which are not only linguistic and cultural studies, but also film, communication, and graphic design studies, for example. This interdiscipline happens to have different final products, which are influenced by the channels, visual and acoustic, and by the multicodes, linguistic, paralinguistic, musical, special effects, iconographic, photographic, that affect the translation operations in the transfer. These final products are known as subtitling, dubbing, voiceover, subtitling, audio description, re-speaking, and game localization. I must say that AVT is in fact, and still today, a thriving branch of translation studies as audiovisual media keeps growing globally. Therefore, softwares and literature on AVT keep being updated constantly, and still to this day. There were in fact the channels of AVT which triggered most of my difficulties when working as an AV translator. I classified these difficulties into minor and major. Within the minor difficulty, I experienced some issues related to the translation process and procedures that are present in every translation process, that, as far as I am concerned and as far as I have experienced myself. Such issues are, for example, linguistic and cultural constraints. Among the major difficulties, on the one hand, I experienced some problems with the visual channel, and they resulted when running films through a HISAB. I realized that my computer's capacity was too low to what is expected when working with softwares and videos. On the other hand, I experienced problems also with the acoustic channel, and they appear when working with the codifying process of translation. It turned out that the speakers of my computer were not reproducing clear speech sounds that I needed when working with audiovisual translation. Now, you might wonder, how did I overcome these issues? Well, I did proper documentation and research on what were a computer's requirements when working with ABT. I also replaced my computer with a good one that I borrowed, by the way. I also worked with an extra monitor and a pair of headphones. All these features together guaranteed a time-saving experience, comfort, effectiveness, and a multitasking activity, which is very, very important when working with translation in general. Now, let me comment on some achievements. Well, I gained some personal and professional growth as I was frequently being evaluated and promoted into higher ranks. I had a close approach to different practices such as SEO analysis and community management. I established strategies and communicative channels in online environments, something that I had never done before. I also gained some new tools and personal skills as leadership, an eye for detail, and team player. I acquired an awareness of the technological aspects of ABT, which I used to not pay much attention to, as well as an awareness of online work, which resulted to be as demanding as on-site work. Okay, let's head now to the cultural essay titled Mérida's Contribution to Film Festivals for Children in Venezuela, which ties in with my participation as an audiovisual translator for FICAIJ. For the purpose of this essay, I did some research on when and where film festival celebrations started in Venezuela. And as a surprise to me, I found out that Merida was home to the biggest cinematographic exhibition in Venezuela and in Latin America by the 1960s, when most of the film festival celebrations, even from Latin America, were held in Europe. And what an honor to say that all this was possible thanks to the participation of the University of Los Andes and the initiative of its Departamento de Cine, who led the primera muestra de cine documental latinoamericano in Mérida, which later turned into the Primer Festival de Cine Nacional in 1980. Today, this festival is known as Festival del Cine Venezolano, and whose last edition was celebrated last year. From those years on, some authors started highlighting the golden age of the Venezuelan cinema, characterized by the production of national films per year, the number of sold tickets, and the number of international awards per year. Unfortunately, this age eroded rapidly and lately into the decrease in production and exhibition of films. Given the economic and political situation of the country, the lack of funding, the drop of moviegoers, and the transport and power limitations within the country. Under such a scenario, I drew the following conclusions: that there is a small space for cinematographic projects for children in Venezuela, and as a consequence, film production and film festivals for children are not very popular and as much as recognized as they are in other Latin American countries. Also, this type of events face regional challenges, such as the lack of sponsorship and the fact that this is a different film genre that needs to be assessed thoroughly and individually by every country. But as light at the end of the tunnel, there's still one remaining project for children regarding film festivals in Venezuela, which is FICAIJ. This festival has an uninterrupted performance of more than 10 years in Merida. FICAIJ has held more than 100 events that go from workshops, exhibition, and production of AV materials by and for children. FICAIJ represents then a cost-free formative option for young audiences out of the capital city. But unfortunately, FICAIJ also faces the lack of national support and sponsorship, and it stands practically on its own. But despite all these impediments, FICAIJ keeps providing education and entertainment for children in Venezuela. And for this reason, I consider that FICAIJ is Merida's contribution to children's film festivals in Venezuela. Well, let me finally talk about the conclusions and recommendations. To the students of Mother Languages School going through translation, I recommend you to be informed and equipped with the right tools. As you saw through my experience, theoretical aspects are not enough when doing AVT. You will always need some knowledge on technical aspects that we usually take for granted. I also recommend you to keep up with AVT updates that are today available online and in the form of, for instance, YouTube channels, podcasts, and blogs. To Itsoye, I suggest you to assess interns, strengths, skills, and flaws before putting them right into any given job. I consider that we all have different capacities and competences that if they are assessed properly, it could result into a better teamwork. To Modern Languages School, I really appreciate the effort you have done throughout the years. I personally want to thank you for all the commitment and passion for educating. And I still would like to recommend you to keep encouraging students through workshops and activities. I consider that any kind of material or recommendation dealing or concerning translation is very helpful for students when they want to get started in the translation world and business. Well, this is all. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your time and attention.